Good evening. Calling the October 25th meeting of the General Forum to order, and I would ask you to join me in welcoming me.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Public comment. Anyone wish to comment on an item that is not on the agenda? We'll give you 5 minutes. Once? Wait twice? No one on Zoom wants to comment? Thank you. New agenda items. Anyone like to add an item to the agenda? Wait once? Wait twice? Not hearing any. Thank you. Approval of minutes as included in the packet, September 27. Motion to accept those, please.
Second move.
Second. Second. Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Okay, item 5, the Mustard Gap to Valley Project update, presented by Sharima Young. Sharima, are you on?
I'm on. Good evening, everyone. Good to be with you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I want to introduce my colleague and our partner, Mr. Gap to Valley Project. We have come before you before to talk about the project about 2 years ago. And we want to give an update as to where we are. We won't have a lot of detail, but we did want to share where we are and where we're going. So tonight I have with me Neil Sullivan, our university planner, who's been leading the effort through the consultants that we've hired to take a look at the several ideas that were presented. Can you hear me?
The audio is a little bit weird, but let's keep seeing if we can get it better. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to turn off my camera and see if that helps. Okay, is that better?
Much. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that, a little bit of an unstable internet connection. So as I mentioned, so Neil is going to talk to us about where we are with the project and about the consultants that we've hired and where we plan to go next. We also have Deb Nardone on, one of our partners in this project from Clearwater Conservancy, Executive Director. And so Deb and I will be here to kind of fill in some of or any gaps that Neil may have, but Neil is going to present tonight. And also just wanted to let you know that we have our outreach department who has taken over this project. So it's going to be housed in their department. So we'll be working with them to flesh out the public aspect of how we engage once this all gets started. So I want to turn it over to Neil. He's going to try and share his screen. So Scott, I don't know if you can give him that capability to share his screen.
You should be all ready to go.
Okay, great, thank you. So Neil, I turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me well. As Sharima said, my name is Neil Sullivan. I'm the university planner for Penn State, and really happy to be invited to come here tonight and share where we are with the Mustard Gap Development Lands project. So I'm gonna share my screen right now. Okay, so I wanted to just take a step back and talk a little bit about the project history. And then how did that lead up to where we are today? So just really big picture, the Mustard Gap to Valley Lands site, which is what we're calling MG2D, is 355 acres, and it spans both sides of Route 45. It connects Whitehall Road all the way up to the northern slope of the Tussey Range, which is adjacent to Rothrock State Forest. and it has a combination of uses today, such as actively managed agricultural lands. Slab Cabin Run does bisect through it near Route 45. It has a few trails on it as well, and it has some existing scrub forests on the south side of Route 45. So here's an aerial of where we are. So in this picture, we're hovering over Rothrock State Forest, looking towards Ferguson Township, the borough, and Penn State University. So the Musser-Getter Valley Lands project is this polygon shape outlined in orange. And when we started looking at this, we noticed that there's a lot of trail and bike connections that really lead up to this property. And so at the outset, this was a way to really help connect all the trails that are happening at Rothrock down across Route 45 into the neighborhoods in Ferguson and the borough. In this particular map, on the bottom of this image, there are some yellow dash lines, and those are proposed trails that we got from the Friends of Rothrock Forest. Some of them are, I believe that they're in the process of getting built, but we just wanted to know where they might come to our property so that we could potentially connect to them as we begin the planning phase. Some of the land uses around the MG2B property, we have a lot of private farmland. There's a long history of farming in this valley. Whitehall Regional Park is to the north. We also have the Water Authority property up along Whitehall Road. And then part of this property goes into Harris Township, but most of it resides in Ferguson Township. And so this planning began back in the fall of 2018, and it really started with the Stuckman School at Penn State, where faculty and students got together, and before any planning could begin, they really wanted to do a deep dive and understand the land, what are the cultural resources, the ecological resources, soil, and the soil composition of the land. So the first semester was really an analysis phase, just trying to see what was there, and then judgments could be made about what do we want to work with, and what was the history of the site. And then later on in spring 2019, Penn State and Clearwater shared this analysis with a larger community, while the Stuckman School began looking at land use scenarios on the property. At the same time, we were using GIS and geodatabases to understand land use implications and how that might affect the ecology of the site, the water quality of the site, and share those results with the community so that we can have live feedback. And then in the fall of 2019, planning studies ended, and that's when President Barron announced 7 design principles that would be carried forward into future planning of this property. Right away, we did begin to hire a planning consultant, so that was the spring of 2020. And so the idea with this consultant was we wanted to come up with an implementation strategy. So we thought that there were a lot of great ideas from the earlier work, but what we needed to know is how do we get from that to implementing them in real time. And so the consultant that we hired they're called Biohabitats, and they're headquartered out of Baltimore, but they do have offices around the country. They're landscape architects, ecologists, and scientists. They're helping us try to distill the priorities from the earlier work and then come up with action steps so that we can have a step-by-step approach of how to make those a reality. And as I always say, a plan is never a guarantee of development. It's more about an agreed to set of principles or action items that the group does agree to as we go forward. We kicked off the project recently in July. As you noticed, there was a gap between 2020 and 2021, and we did take a pause during the COVID times. But come this summer, President Barron felt it was important to revive this effort and really get things going again. So we've really been working since July to this point. One thing I wanted to do is share some of the earlier work from the Speckman School that is influencing our planning today. And so we have, I think, like 5 different scenarios, and these are sort of diagrammatic planning examples that they were looking at very specific things that really help inform the larger planning framework.
It looks like we may have lost them temporarily, hopefully we'll log back on pretty soon. But I know many of you have heard about some of the ideas. I'm gonna take my camera off so I don't lose you. But as Neil was going through some of those ideas, kind of seeing where some of those can be integrated, and also looking at some of the common things that we had talked about in the previous years, and prioritizing. So seeing what we can begin to start doing, and some of the things that may have more of a long-term strategy. So one of those things which, oh, there he is.
Yeah, sorry guys, I don't know what happened, but my Zoom cut out on me. So
It's okay.
where did I lose you all?
Let's see, you were talking about the water resource protection slide.
Okay, so pretty much right away, that's okay. If you don't mind, I can resume.
Okay.
So this first plan for water resources, it was to protect the water resources to the best of their ability. Go back. So as you are mostly aware, karstiology, it leads to rapid water infiltration. And so what they thought was to maximize the reforestation on this property as much as possible. So with the forest of those 2 things, it allows for the maximum water to be going into the soil, but it also slows stormwater movement across the land so it stays in place so that it can infiltrate. The second design idea was habitat creation. The students learned early on that we are underrepresented with 2 different types of forest. One is a warm season grass and the other one is upland forest. So they wanted to take the opportunity to create those habitats on this property. And these 2 habitats would focus on pollinators, many bird species in the area, and then at the periphery you would have some predatory birds that would naturally occur there. The third scenario is preserving the agriculture and agrotourism. So as they were realizing that this valley has of agriculture and they wanted to celebrate that, they wanted to find a way to bring people to
I apologize, everyone. I don't think we've had this many technical difficulties before. But I'll just speak to some of what Neil has been talking about with some of the 5 ideas, which many of you know. So from the habitat creation in that space, also the water resource protection, and talking about some of those ideas. We talked about agritourism before a little bit, and leverage that area to try to get people from town to the forest. So melding a lot of those ideas together. So I was going to talk about some of the priorities, and one of which I know is a priority for many of you is Route 45. So like for instance, taking a look at that and determining, what it is that we can do to make that crossing a little bit safer within our power, right? So we're not PennDOT, But I think there's something. Oh, it looks like Neil is back.
Yeah, guys, I'm sorry, this has never happened before. I think my computer's tired of Zoom meetings. It is to get back to the room and be there in person. Okay, and so, again, I'm really sorry about this. I'll try to speed through this. So with this one plan, they wanted to focus on specific types of crops. They thought that ingredients for alcohol products might be interesting to people. It might encourage people to come to the property just to learn more about the product and be more in commune with the land. I think number 4 was focusing on passive recreation. So trying to create facilities so that people could come and enjoy the wildlife and the landscape on the property. Some minimal amenities would be built on this, such as overlook and blinds so that you could watch birds without scaring them. And they also wanted to improve the crosswalk to Route 45. And then lastly, this option is what if we do almost nothing and leave things as they are? So it was a way of preserving the agriculture, but trying to do it in a new way that would reduce environmental impact. It would also work to improve the forest without expanding it, but remove invasive species. So it would very much look like it is today, but the activities on the land would be more sensitive to the environment. So the group that we hired with biohabitats, we took those scenarios and we want to build upon them. We want to create the next level of planning studies. We want to take the best ideas, bring them together, and then find out ways to really make this a reality. We do have Penn State stakeholders. Sharuna mentioned Penn State Outreach, which is managing this property going forward, and the physical plant, which is my group. We have the agricultural extension as a stakeholder, so we can learn more about new practices for agriculture. The professors that led the students in the Stuckman School, they're on our stakeholder group as well, so that we could have continuity. And we also are partnering with Clearwater and invited them to be a stakeholder in this planning scenario. We're going to be focusing on the environmental restoration of the property, increasing and improving recreation, look at ways how agriculture might exist on portions of this property, particularly north of Route 45. And we also wanted to see, as a whole, could this be a benefit to the natural resources of the region? The site could be enjoyed and shared. And this vision statement was created by President Barron at the conclusion of the student work. And his vision was to, number 1, protect the local water supply, improve the plant and animal species on the site, and generally make it a place where you want to be, and you can learn about nature, and you can go there and be a resource for your mind and soul. The 7 key principles are going to be driving this new planning scenario with the consultants. So I thought I'd go through them a little bit and dive into them. So number 1, we wanted to create a trail experience on the site. There's going to be a lot of varieties of landscape types on this property, maybe from the existing agriculture. There's going to be edge conditions, there's going to be forest, and we want to bring the trails through all of these things so that you can experience what's happening on the property. Number 2, the agriculture south of Route 45. So this is the farmland that would be most closest to Rothrock. We want to phase that out, and we want to take that property and turn it into a natural habitat, whether it could be a meadow, or we might allow natural forest succession. We're not quite sure yet. It could be a little bit of both, but we're looking at this opportunity as a new place for restorative ecology. Number 3, we do want to expand the riparian buffer to Slab Cabin Run. There is a small buffer there today. We feel like a water buffer would be even better. It would help cool the water and also help create habitat for animals and species that would love to be near the water, and more places for them to live and eat. Number 4, we're going to take different approaches to Route 45 and how do pedestrians cross that road safely. There could be anything from looking at ways to stripe this crosswalk. We could look to see if there could be flashing beacon lights across at this opportunity so we can alert drivers that pedestrians are crossing. We are going to work within the range of options that PennDOT would allow, but at this point, we haven't settled on anything yet. We are going to look at the edges of the muster gap. We're going to try to increase the buffers at the edges so that we can create natural corridors around the property, but also it would help with screening noise and light pollution. It's the idea of additional trails. So rather than from getting point A to point B, you'll be you use the opportunity to go all around Muster Gap, whether you wanted to take a walk or go for a run, so that there'll be ample recreation just within the confines of this property. 7, we want to take a look at the forests on the property, look at the invasive species and what's a good management plan to remove the invasive species. Maybe introduce more native species that might help compete better and restore the forest ecology to this area. And so here's a quick graphic of how those 7 principles are going to be applied on the site. So we have the dark green here to the south is the existing forest that will be restored. This light green, this was the former agricultural space that we're looking at creating a new ecological habitat there, either an extension of a forest or a meadow. Route 45 is here at the edge of the light green, and then just above Route 45 is Slab Cabin Run, so trying to expand on this little buffer area here. And then within this part north of 45 is also existing agriculture. We do want to see how agriculture is going to exist on this property in the future, if it will be either business as usual, or if there could be a new way of doing agriculture on this property that might have a lighter environmental impact. We understand that the Watsons are leasing this property, and so we're going to be partnering with them to see what their interest is and how they can work with us. And then we also have an existing trail slicing down the middle here. So that's sort of like the backbone and the spine of the site. And off of that, we would have a lot of secondary trails to provide a lot of different exercise experiences. And as Rima said, Penn State Outreach is now managing Muster Gap. At the same time, they are going to be they're managing the Arboretum. So they got Muster Gap and the Arboretum at the same time. And so they're very thrilled to have these assets. I personally think they've done an amazing job with Shavers Creek. I take my kids there every summer for camp, and I just think it is a tremendous asset. Mark McLaughlin, he's the director of Shavers Creek. He's chairing our steering committee, and so he's been doing an outstanding job working with all the different Penn State stakeholders. Make sure all the different voices are heard and that we are speaking with one voice. And then finally, I just wanted to talk about the schedule. So as I mentioned, we started in July with the kickoff with the consultant biohabitats. We're currently, we wrapped up 2 scenarios. So we're looking at a whole wide variety of different land use runs. We have to present them to our leadership, the leadership of Penn State Outreach and the leadership of OPP to get their feedback. And we hope that December, January, we're consolidate on a preferred option and then a lot of action items to get to the implementation of this plan. So again, try to have everything wrapped up in the new year. So thank you for your time. That concludes my presentation, and I appreciate your attention.
Questions of Neil or Sharima? Or Deb? Thank you, Neil. Oh. Oh, okay, Elliot, still raining back there, so. Elliot?
Question I had was about the watershed park near Pine Grove Mills. There's a sinking stream that disappears in the ground there. It's essentially water, runoff water that just goes into the ground. And I think a lot of care will be needed to make sure that we don't add any pollutants that aren't there now to that place that's so close to the well fields. What? Excuse me?
Can you, I was taking notes, can you repeat where it is located?
The stream disappears just out to the northeast of the middle of Pine Grove Mills when you getting ready to come out and go to Nixon Road actually. And the stream is, it disappears into the ground and comes up somewhere else. A lot of the streams in the area actually do that, like Slab Cabin Run disappears and then comes back. But it's a place where fresh water sinks back into the ground, and so if you put anything bad in there, it causes a problem.
Okay, yeah, one thing we're doing is we are measuring, I don't know if we have this one located, I'll go back with my team to make sure that we're tracking it. But especially around the agricultural areas, we're looking at different levels of protection around these water features to prevent essentially what you're talking about.
If you drive from campus to Pine Grove Mills, when you get near where the gas station is and most of the businesses, and make a sharp right, as if you're going to go back up toward Whitehall Road, you'll see it there off to the right.
Okay.
It's not actually in the track that you're talking about.
It goes underground by the, used to be Watkins, Green Birches and the Slab Cabin Run. And we did a dive tracing on it a couple years ago and found that it takes about 2 days, which is pretty phenomenal for the water to cover that much territory. So I know exactly what you're talking about, Elliot.
Yeah.
So Elliot, just to confirm, did you say it's not on the Mustard Gap property, but it's adjacent?
I don't think it is. I think it's closer into the middle of Pine Grove Mills, but anything that's in that area has a possibility, one has the possibility to affect the other.
Sure.
Most likely flows under the Mustard Gap area. Emerges further down Slab Cabin. Good, thank you, Elliot. Neil? Anybody, any other?
Pam Salakangas.
Oh, Pam, okay. Can't see you. Oh, there, okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to just make a really quick follow-up statement for Neil, Sharima, and Deb. I would love to have a follow-up conversation with you in the next week or so because the Upper Mustard Gap Greenway Trail, the old temporary trail is now closed. That land has been restored. That was land that crossed over the State College Borough Water Authority property and then came on to Whitehall Road Regional Park property. That upper section has now been closed and restored. And so now the trail is shifting to the shared use path that comes down Blue Course Drive, which is currently paved. But it continues in very awkward fashion because the pump station, of course, was built, but the rest of the trail system for the park has not yet been developed. I'd love to talk to Penn State folks about a temporary relocation of that trail because soon when Phase 1 development begins for Whitehall, that entire trail connection will not be available. And the only option if we wanted to keep it open during construction is to slightly relocate it on Penn State land. But we probably should talk about whether that's even an option in the short term. So I just wanted to throw it out there. I'd love to brainstorm with all of you looking at the map about that going forward.
Does Laura has raised her hand? Laura?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Pam, for bringing that to the table tonight. It provides a good segue into my comment as well. Pam was referring to shorter term access, and As chair of the Parks Capital Committee, and Shrima, you know, this is probably coming, this comment tonight, you know that our committee has been discussing securing a more formal agreement between the region and Penn State for our residents to ensure access between town and mountain. I think your beautiful maps really illustrated so well how that is an absolute linchpin in our master plan of connection into the mountains. And so I guess I'll look forward to continuing that conversation and maybe getting that dialogue going. And thank you so much for your lovely presentation tonight. Thank you.
Discussion item only, no action required, so we'll move on. Thank you, Neil and Shrima. And Deb too. Okay. Item 6, update on the Whitehall Road Regional Park, and this is an update only presented by Pam and Lou.
Good evening, everybody. I'm gonna take my mask off.
We have Lou enforcement somewhere.
Sorry, we're standing behind. So Pam's online. Joe's actually gonna run the presentation, so if you see me snap one time, that's for Joe to advance the slides. So, as Denny said, we just wanted to give a brief update where we are. Bids are out. Pam's gonna talk into the current conditions, but we don't have much information other than our proposed schedule. So, we wanted to set the stage for the discussion and the direction that we're gonna go. Joe? Look at that.
Okay, I think this slide is mine. Thanks, Lou, for opening up the presentation. Just really want to give you a brief update to what you see on the screen. Playground equipment for the Whitehall Road Regional Park Phase 1 has been purchased, and through the kind gesture of Harris Township, we will be taking delivery of that equipment this fall, and it will be stored at their new Public Works Department. In addition to that playground equipment, there is also a playground fence, and we are in the process of negotiating that contract now through CoStars, and we also hope to take delivery of that fence, also to be stored with the playground equipment in that building. So those things are moving along. The lighting contract is secured, the LED sports field lighting, and we will not take delivery of those items until next year, 2022, once we have an updated construction schedule. We're very lucky that Musco can store those items on our behalf, and we also, once we take delivery, we'll also be invoiced. So that actually works pretty well with the grant timeline that we have for both the playground and the LED sports field lighting. The bid documents were revised. We mentioned this briefly at last week's authority meeting. In order to have more information on this bid round, we did revise the bid documents. There were a few awards during the last round, so any other remaining projects those bid packages were redrafted. And in addition, we have new items as part of the bids to include the restroom building and any HVAC, plumbing, and electrical related to that building. In addition, we have secured a CoStars vendor for the maintenance storage building as well. The bid packages actually went live last Friday, October 22nd, so they are currently live on PennBid, which is our electronic bidding module. And so those have started. We've already started to receive some questions and comments. We do have a pre-bid meeting for the site development package only coming up, and we're hearing from vendors that they're starting to sign in and register for that event, so that's very good news. Questions on any of the particular bids? There are 10 total bids for this project right now, to include site development, bringing utilities in, restroom building, as I mentioned, the related electrical, HVAC and plumbing for that building. So just blanked out there. The site development package also has now a new combination of site development as well as concrete and paving. And one of our bids has been combined to do landscaping and seeding as one package. Those were separate last year due to some grants we thought were going to come through. Those did not, which actually allowed us to combine those bids this time and improve that bidding process. Questions for me before Lou takes the next slide?
So a couple of the key concepts, we did, as Pam mentioned, bid the entire scope. When I say entire scope, that was as it's been presented the last year and a half, as well as including the restroom facility, the irrigation system, and the maintenance facility. So we're trying to get economies of scale and get the best achievable prices that we can through the bidding process. Our homework is going to be, once we receive those bids and go through the tabulation process, will be to come back to this group with what we can afford and how, then present them in a way that everybody clearly understands. So we did identify alternatives in the past. We'll continue to work with them as we need to, as we tally and those bids and best understand. We're going to continue also to evaluate co-stars for any additional opportunities that we have. Pam mentioned on the last slide about the benefit of co-stars agreements for the maintenance facility. That's at about 50% of what the project initially had estimated. So we have seen savings opportunities with that as well. Next slide, Joe. So the current construction conditions, the market itself, prices are still fluctuating. So we really have some discussions with the vendors and contractors. 30 days is the maximum. I mean, we've heard already where 7 to 10 day bids are still the norm. So we're asking people to go a little bit beyond to help facilitate our process once again. One of the big concerns with our project is there's not a lot of labor. There's a lot of equipment hours, equipment time associated with all the site work. So as fuel prices continue to increase, that's one of the newly identified risks of the project until we can sort through that through the bidding process. The competitive bidding, we hope, is an early start that makes people look at this as a major project for the early spring schedule. We wanted to bid this fall and not wait till spring, so contractors would be able to procure their own schedules and know that they had guaranteed work right out of the gate after the winter thaw. We say the labor market stability in this area, we're somewhat unique because there's always work in the center region. We don't need a lot of labor again with this project. It's mostly equipment. There will be some general labor, general trades associated with the restrooms, but most of that work is equipment driven. Pam?
Here we go. So as we stated, bids are open now. Our next steps will be to export all of the data when the bids close, which is they are scheduled to close on November 19th. We'll be exporting that bid tabulation sheet. And as we noted prior, we have added many more unit rates to this bid process so that we can really compare bid to bid to bid. And each of these bidders do have to show what their unit rate cost is, whether it may be for a rock allowance or it could be for topsoil movement. There's a lot more work going to be done by Lou and I and our project management team in reviewing that bid tab. But the goal is to get that bid tab out the following week, which is the week of Thanksgiving, the week of November 22nd. And then if necessary, we're going to be scheduling some de-scoping meetings with our potential low bidders to answer any additional questions we may have. That will happen during the week of November 29th. All of that work is to prepare for December meetings that we hope to have with the following groups that are noted. That includes the Parks and Recreation Authority, Parks Capital Committee, Finance, Facilities Committee, eventually Executive Committee, and General Forum. We want to be able to bring this information to you, and what we hope to do in the next week or so is get in touch with the various chairs of those committees to talk about meetings scheduled for the month of December. So we have a lot happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but we're excited about the interest in the bid project as it stands.
I think one of the key points about what we did with the bid documents themselves, our goal was to reduce risk. So we had CMT go out to the site, provide more borings, as Neil mentioned, with the karst infrastructure underground. That always presents a challenge. So everywhere where we have a deep footer or foundation, the light standards, the restroom building foundation system, and even the slab for the maintenance facility, we did additional research. So we've been able to classify the soils at the site, so that takes, sometimes that can take 5 to 10% out of the numbers from the site work contractors just by providing that additional information. So that's the type of work that went into restructuring the bids, everything that we learned from the initial bid process that would improve and provide clarity. We've done that, another way to reduce risk as well. So any questions, comments? You know, first of all, we'd like to thank everybody in the room and online and the community for the continued support of this very significant project, something that the community has been waiting for quite some time, as I understand it. And we're getting closer and closer to real dirt movement and real excitement around the project. So thank you very much.
Takes a while to wait for good things.
It does. Those things that are worth having come with time, Dennis.
Let's wait.
That's right.
Questions of Pam or Lou or Joe or Rita? Pam, okay.
Yeah, I have a question about the maintenance facility. I think I can kind of see it on there. Whoops, it's off. At any rate, it seemed like it was like below the little woods there and below and above where the community gardens and the dog park were planned. And I'm wondering if that's like built in stone, because it seems like that's one of, that whole strip there, that whole area there on the right is about the only place where there aren't fields planned. And I don't know, I was just thinking it would be a much more pleasant experience for people that want to recreate quietly and softly and kind of commune with nature, not to have a maintenance facility right there, to have, you know, there's a lot of other options.
I can answer that question, Pam, if you'd like.
Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so remember that this drawing that you're looking at on the screen is the actual phase 1 drawing. It's actually layered on top of the master plan for this park. So the building location for the maintenance storage building is part of the master plan layout. Actually, there is another building that's designated for this area in phase 3 or 4 of this park, which is actually Parks and Recreation's administration building. So there are other things that do go in this area. You've mentioned 2 of them, the community gardens and the dog park. But actually this area on another plan that you're not gonna be able to see tonight does show this area is also our stormwater management area with landscape buffers between the maintenance storage building as well as landscape buffers on the exterior of the park. So the majority of this area will be still naturalized and will be meadow grasses because we are not installing the gardens or the dog park at this point and or until funding becomes available. But that location of the maintenance building is where the master plan designates it to be.
And then you said, well, yeah, because I do remember there being even a larger structure there. Like this doesn't look very big, but I remember there being on one, I don't know, I looked at so many different ones. On one of the iterations of it, there was a much larger building, and That's sort of what I was more worried about, that taking up so much of that space. So
Yeah, that's called the
space-
maintenance central maintenance facility, which is not going in at this time, it's just a single building.
Is that eventually planned for it, or could there be another place for that? And what about things like pesticides and herbicides?
Well, I think that's a little off topic for tonight's presentation, but the central maintenance facility is an ongoing topic that our facilities committee is considering in the mid and long term. But right now, it's the maintenance storage building that's designated for that area.
Would there be herbicides and pesticides stored there? Yeah.
But that's not part of tonight's discussion, we're just proposing the plan right now for our current bidding process.
Different part of the discussion, so.
Yeah,
Patty, Stevens, have you?
So you don't really know what's gonna be stored there then?
that building is a storage building for equipment and supplies that our parks maintenance staff utilize on a daily basis.
Okay, so it could be for pesticides.
Similar to the old call maintenance building, so. Patty, Stevens, please?
Pardon?
Patty? You're muted.
Thank you. Sort of following up to what Pam was saying, in one of the slides, you talked about alternatives to prioritization. And then does that sort of tie into the last slide where it talked about going back to the different committees, the finance, executive, facilities, etc.? Could you just touch a little bit on the alternatives to prioritization?
Sure, I'll respond to that one. So in the initial review of the preliminary bids that we got back in January, we did look at alternatives as far as what portions of the park became affordable based on the approved budget. So Patty, we won't really have a good understanding of what they are until we receive all the bids and can correlate and tabulate them. And then we'd be presenting those as needed.
Thank you, Patty.
Dennis.
Thank you.
Over here.
Quick question. The way this set of bid packages is set up, not the entire long-term, whatever changes may come over the next decade or so. How much parking is being planned with these bids now? How many spaces?
Pam, the total number of spaces, I don't know that off the top of my head, other than it's been what has been planned for the phase one build out based on the research that was done on Oak Hall utilization, as well as some of the projected program activities that are expected to occur at the park.
When we last discussed this, that was several hundred spaces. Will that all be permeable or will it be impermeable?
So there's paved spaces to support the ADA requirements. There are semi-permeable spaces with compacted stone and other aggregates, so that's all been calculated as well with the stormwater management plans and requirements.
Because clearly, our last topic is talking about, among other things, water management right straight through here.
Absolutely.
And it would really be silly of us to be supporting water management with our right hand and impermeable parking, which leads to water problems with our left. So I want to make sure that we're not cross-circuited here.
No, there are multiple different methodologies planned for the park from a stormwater management perspective.
Thank you.
And you've included those from the Oak Hall park design, because there's only 4 handicap spots in Oak Hall.
Yeah, there's more than that with
Yeah,
this
the
park.
rest is gravel or grass, so.
Correct.
there's triple the handicap parking at this particular park because of the fully accessible playground. We have parking on both sides of that playground.
Very good.
Laura? Thank you, Laura?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up on 2 things I think Teresa had mentioned. One is, are the bid packages arranged to include all the parking? So my understanding, based on the question I asked at, I think it was a park authority meeting, I'm not sure, was that the bids are being put out in a way that uses square footage. So if it were the case that we needed to reduce parking due to budgetary reasons, that needed to be a consideration. My understanding is that it could be done based on the way these this bid package is arranged. So I would want to be corrected if that understanding is not correct.
No,
And then
Laura,
the other item was, sorry, just if I just to finish up so I don't forget. The other item was the parking, shown on the land development plan. I specifically followed up with our public works director on this item. Currently shown on the land development plan as either gravel or paved, and that is considered impermeable in Ferguson Township and according to our stormwater ordinance. So I'm sure that the supervisors would be very, very supportive of paving, no pun intended, paving the way to making a small adjustment if necessary in that land development plan to include something like what Ferguson Township used at our building, which is like a paver that's considered permeable. So thanks for bringing that up. And if we wanted to do that as a group, I'm sure that Ferguson would be very, very supportive of that. Thank you.
so Laura, let me try to remember the first one because it was so long ago.
Haha.
So, yeah, the parking lots, that was what Pam had alluded to, was that we have unit costs. So we'll be looking at actual cubic yard numbers for site work associated materials. So the cut and fill of the dirt, we'll be looking at acres of coverage for gravel, for the wearing coat, as well as the sub-base for the pavement in those spaces. So we will definitely have data behind just a raw number for those types of elements.
Thank you. Anyone else? You don't see any blue hands there. That's it? Good. Thank you, Pam and Lou.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Number 7, COG 2022 summary budget. Evan, this has a motion. I would entertain a motion and second, and we'll do discussion.
So moved.
Now 1, 2, okay.
Well, that cut my presentation down from an hour to 45 minutes.
Thank you, Lou, for taking that.
You get
What else
12
do you do?
minutes.
So,
You want to read that motion, Evan?
I will read the motion, yes, but I wanted to discuss it a little bit,
Okay,
give some background. But the motion is that the general forum is recommended by the executive and finance committees receive the draft 2022 summary budget for the Center Region Council of Governments and refer to the municipalities for consideration. And further, that the comments be referred to the COG executive director by 8 a.m., not 7:59, but by 8 a.m. on November 18th, 2021 for distribution to the Finance Committee at its November meeting.
And don't be late at 8:10, 8 o'clock.
It's a specific time, it's in the agenda, you see it.
Discussion.
So if I might, Mr. Chair, so basically what we're asking here, and it's stated in the agenda, that we're asking the general forum to move this forward. We have the motion on the table. We reviewed, we had the Finance Committee had 4 almost, well, I guess they were close to 3-hour, some of them were longer sessions over a period of about 2 weeks to review the budget. And before I get into some of the specifics that are listed on the agenda, I did want to take a moment to put this in perspective and kind of set the scene. Back almost 20 months ago, when our area, much like the nation, shut down due to the COVID pandemic. And for the next several months after that, many things in the economy ground to a halt. We were uncertain as to what kind of local funding municipalities and COG would have. We certainly faced highly volatile times and worked our way through last year's budget and finances. So first, I wanted to offer praise to COG staff and agency directors for working through a very difficult situation with resourcefulness and imagination to see what we could do without and how we might be able to realize as many revenue sources as possible. And I think they did that very successfully. Your fellow elected officials on the COG Finance Committee also deserve praise for navigating through the times as well. So this year, things have become clearer, and that clarity is evidenced in the budget. This year, things are presented different problems, though, from last year's. And once again, it took considerable effort to work through them by the staff and then the Finance Committee. We worked together to come up with a budget that reflects the needs of the community, while at the same time realizing we can't do everything we would like to. There are things we left out that the community would like to do, and we were able to defer some of them to future years. It's a heavy lift, certainly, figuratively, literally. Here's, I don't know how many pounds this weighs, but there's a lot. So what we're presenting here, with inflation projected to continue to rise, and Social Security payment increase for next year already pegged at almost 6%. The budget presented to you for consideration this evening and take back to your municipalities is more than 1% below that figure. And you can see that in the particulars of the agenda I'll draw your attention to in the middle of page number 3, I guess that is, what each municipality's recommended monies are that will have to be paid according to this budget. But what we've just talked about, the motion that we moved and seconded is to refer this back to the municipalities to talk about, as we do every year, in depth, to scrutinize it. Both the finance director and the executive director will make themselves available for each particular municipal meeting, as they do each year, to answer any questions. And I'm sure that if you have any questions for me or them now, we'll be happy to answer.
What are going to be your questions for individual municipal meetings? Anything of general interest now that we can ask our distinguished chair in this committee? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Moving right along, page 4 here. Eric and Rich are going to talk about the Parks and Recreation Governance Special Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In July, a proposal was presented to the Executive Committee by Vice Chair Mr. Frank to look at the governance process for Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority and its relationship with other parts of COG, and looking at its future and the mission and purpose and the best ways to accomplish the improvements to the purpose and the mission for the authority. During the next couple of months, the Executive Committee discussed that a few times and asked staff to prepare some research and some thoughts on the structure to achieve this. And there's a document in your packet titled Parks and Recreation Governance Special Committee. Under the structure provided for in the Articles of Agreement, it seems best to create this as an ad hoc special committee for the COG that would work for a particular period of time and try to address the items that are listed in your agenda, as well as to look at the best structure for all of the various COG committees that would support the work of Parks and Recreation and the authority in a consistent, cost-effective, and high-quality process, and have the maximum positive impact on the quality of life of those living, working, and playing in the Center region, in accordance with the mission and vision that the COG established earlier this year. Other details are included in that, and the most recent discussion by the Executive Committee involved the structure and appointment process for the participants on this special committee. The details are listed in your packet and are part of the detailed motion that is listed in the packet on page 5. And I think the attached document, as well as that motion, lists out the both the structure and purpose, but also the process for appointing members to the committee, and myself and members of the executive committee, Rich, could answer any questions that anyone has.
I neglected to ask for a motion as found on page 5, a second for Eric eloquently.
Second.
Who did who did
Teresa made the motion.
Teresa motion, Carter second? Okay. Discussion on what Eric shared or what's in the document?
I might throw a wrench in the situation. I was attended the executive committee meeting where I first heard about this, and since then thought a little bit about Half Moon Township's non-participation in it, which I understand because we don't participate in the parks program. However, we are allowing staff to be non-voting members. So I was wondering if there might be consideration for Half Moon Township to still be represented, provide some unbiased voice to the governance aspect, and be a non-voting member.
Oh, no, we can't do that.
So I don't mean to throw a wrench in that, but I just wanted to put that out there.
It wasn't a big wrench.
Oh, good,
Right,
good.
yeah.
I'm a little person, so it's a little wrench.
There, a wrench? Well,
No, that could have been allowed under the original structure because it drew from the COG committees, but I absolutely.
we spent a lot of time on that bulletin section there.
Yes.
Mechanics are putting it together, so I see no reason why that couldn't occur.
I would say stick some kind of a bullet in there, since most of these are discussing parks and recreational municipalities. Put a bullet in there that perhaps adjoining or something regional townships or municipalities who would probably be using these, even though they're not part of the center region, could have non-voting people to represent. So if somebody from the east side, closer to Belmont, Spring Township, say, their kids might want to be using those fields at some point in the future. I don't have a problem with people from the surrounding region putting their comments in, and certainly I think Half Moon probably should. But I just think as long as they understand that it's for comments and for being in touch rather than.
Could we add that by
voting.
consensus?
Would that
rather than
work for
formal
you?
motion? I'm willing to do consensus on it rather than.
I'm okay with that. I was mostly concerned with the COG municipalities. And because we are tangentially involved in all of these conversations about parks, this is specifically around governance. And sometimes it's nice to have someone who doesn't have skin in the game to help with the governance aspect, that they can take themselves sort of out of the detail and help in that conversation.
Could we ask Eric to put
Could I-
bulletin item together? I saw Laura.
Can I make it?
There you go.
I just wanted to, I think it's a great idea that Half Moon would be a non-voting member, except for then then I'm like, then we'd have 8, but the voting members would still be 7, so that would be fine. I would be supportive of other COG municipalities having a non-voting seat. I wouldn't want to expand it further than that, because this isn't about the comp plan where it would be about use and whatnot, but it's more about our internal governance process and structure. And so I think that Half Moon has a front row seat to that, whether they like it or not, but other municipalities in the area don't. So I think that it would be fine to include other COG municipalities as non-voting members, but probably not other regional municipalities as non-voting members. That's just my thought. Thank you.
We make Half Moon sit through all of our discussions, so
Might
that's
as
all
well.
invite them.
Might as well.
But she's getting rid of somebody. Mr. Mullen?
I just wanted to say, I think we should make a motion on this, because the motion as stated here specifically says participate numbers. So I think there should be a motion.
So it's an addendum to this.
So I would make a motion to amend
Yeah.
the original motion by including Half Moon as a non-voting member. Second.
Okay, got a second on that?
For the amendment.
Well,
Do we need to vote on the amendment or is it a friendly
Vote
amendment?
on the amendment.
So I heard a second.
No, I think
Steve made
it's a friendly or you're voting motion?
It's a friendly amendment.
I think it should be a voting motion, just
Okay,
because
it's your motion.
No.
we are changing a
You
motion.
need a second then?
Bruce second.
Bruce, okay. Discussion? Not hearing it, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, thank you. Okay, and you can, right?
Yeah, I just, I wanted to comment on this, as I read through this, I saw consultant and all this thing. As one of the first chair, and I think we've been very successful in the facilities committee, we started out as an ad hoc. And one of the things we did is, the first year we did have money in the budget in case we needed a consultant. But we met as a group with all the stakeholders, and we were very successful at sitting down and realizing we didn't even know what the complete problem was yet. So we took the first, 6 months, Rich, roughly, and we tried to identify what the problem was, what we wanted to accomplish, and what we did that, and we realized we could do this, and then we were fortunate enough to get a volunteer to help with a lot of the legwork. But I would suggest that before we start hiring consultants and heading down that path, the people, let's find out, have that committee start with the stakeholders. What is the problem? What aren't the problems? What do we need to do? And what we move on? I would like to see that, make sure that that gets into that committee and get a good, strong chairman that can run that. But I think we need to do that before we start jumping into the professional things. So
That was part of the discussion in exec with respect to the operational part of putting this together, so. I see no yellow hands on the screen. All in favor of accepting the motion on page 5 as, I guess, amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign, okay, thank you. Let's see, let's move to the park maintenance facility, done by Lou. There's a motion on this on page 6, I would entertain that, and then we'll move to the discussion and the unit vote scenario that Scott's gonna walk us through.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second?
Second.
Second, second, okay. Discussion? Lou?
Sure, so just a brief overview. I think Pam, you and Laura both had indicated a longer term approach. This lease is structured to facilitate that as the facilities committee completes the facility condition assessment process and we move into more of a master facility planning initiative. We know that we can't have anything developed in at least 2 years. So this agreement is a 5-year agreement, but we do have the opportunity to terminate the lease after the second full year of occupancy. So that gives us flexibility. This has been a great relationship between COG and the landowner, and continues to support the overall initiative and help us with the facilities that we need currently. We've been in the location since 2013, so we'll continue to evaluate that, like I said, with the facility condition assessment, and then more along the lines of the longer-term master facility plan.
Shame it's a little too far away. Nice facility, but a little too far away.
Yeah.
Other discussion before we move into the unit vote scenario. Anybody? Pam? Pam?
I had a question. I read the lease, it was quite a while ago when Eric had first sent it. And my recollection is that there was a possibility for one that was a 3-year lease with 2 1-year additional, I guess you call like the options, yeah. And the other option was the 5-year with a the ability to get out after 2, and I'm just wondering why it wasn't at 3 years. Because 2 years seems like it's not very much time to plan where you're going with the building and get it built.
Yeah, so 2 years gives us enough time to develop that plan, and then the other 3 of that lease would help us facilitate that implementation if there were recommendations that came out of the 2 processes that I mentioned. And it does not lock us into any other commitment at that point. So it's the most flexible option that we had versus the 3 plus 2. So those were recommendations from the facility committee as well as the finance to end up with the lease document as it's presented with your agenda packet tonight.
So then the 3-year wasn't even considered?
It was, and that was the format, quite honestly.
Have a 3-year opt-out? Have a 3-year opt-out time?
What's the option? What's the notice requirement?
It's a 90-day.
So Pam, what happens is that upon 90 days notice, the COG can cancel this lease. So anytime after 2 years, anytime after 2 years, it could be 2 years 90, 2 years 180, whatever you want it to be. So this can be a 3, it can be a 4, it can be a 5, it can be a 6, but doesn't require any action by the COG. If the format with the options were required, exercising each one of those options would require a vote of the COG. Whereas in this structure, it's already there and it actually gives us more flexibility.
So it could happen at 3-year then, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay, it didn't read that way to me.
And any portion of a year. So if it takes us 2 years, 6 months, we could get out rather than wait for the 3 years.
Okay, that wasn't really clear to me. I get it. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Let's move. All right. Oh, anybody else? All right. Laura, okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Well, I just wanted to say that given I think, is it just a 5-year lease, right? You said 6 years, is that, Rich, I'm sorry.
If I said it 6, it was mistaken.
Okay, I thought,
It's a total of 5 years.
Understand?
A minimum of 2 years, no more than 5 years.
Okay, super. Then I will make my comment. I was like, wait, is this just a rolling forever lease? Okay, so my comment would be, if the lease is just 5 years, and we know that we'll need a feasibility study ahead of an actual maintenance facility if we build one, a centralized maintenance facility, shouldn't we be, and our CIP is actually 5 years long, that's like right now our rolling deadline then. And so shouldn't we have maybe in year 2 of our CIP, the feasibility study, and year 3, the beginning of the loan or the funding for the facility? I guess what I'm just trying to point out here is that our CIP should probably align with these kinds of plans and documents, and I think we're gonna do that. So I guess my thought would be that, so for the next CIP, when we have that single page that we talked about of things that are not yet in the CIP, 2 things we would want to put on there would be the centralized maintenance facility feasibility study and the centralized maintenance facility itself. So that's all. Thanks.
So Laura, I'll address the first part of that. I honestly hope that the facilities committee and COG staff and agency director and the committees can sort through that master facility plan element without much external assistance. So that's one reason why you don't see that in the CIP, is that would be an internal process that we would work through, like I said, primarily with the facilities committee initially. As far as the building, there's no way to estimate a cost because we have no idea if it's a single facility, multiple smaller facilities, the location, the construction type, or the needs of the building or buildings. So until we learn more about that and include the facility condition assessment and that planning effort, there really isn't a number that we could put into a CIP right now.
If I could just make a follow-up comment. So one thing I've been trying to work on is help my board be able to understand COG, budgeting, finances, and capital planning in the same way that they can understand the Ferguson Township budgeting, finances, and capital planning. And in Ferguson, we have this idea on the long range that we're gonna build a fire station. And we actually could say the same thing about it, like we have quote, no idea. Okay, so we have like some idea, we know it's not gonna cost us $1. We for sure know not $1. We know it's not gonna cost $100 million, not $100 million. Somewhere in between there is the number it's gonna cost, so we just pick a number that we think is reasonable, just even reasonable. It could be $1 million off, but it's a ballpark, so that as the elected officials rotate through, it stays on our planning radar. We understand for the future of Ferguson Township, there's gonna be this multi-million-dollar cost. When elected officials come into COG though, you kind of have to just listen to all the whispers and oh this and that. And remember one time 3 years ago, they said they were gonna do this. So I'm trying to help us be able to encapsulate all of that information in 1 or 2 places so it can be a snapshot for the public and for elected officials as we rotate through. Some of us have term limits, I know others don't.
Sure.
So the thought that like because we don't have an exact number is like it's sort of like saying I'm not going to say I'm going to say $0 because I don't know how much a house was going to cost me eventually. I'm just going to put something in there so I can recognize it's coming. So I don't know. I've said it a couple times, and I hope that we can try to find in COG, and maybe it's at the finance committee level, like we're talking about setting a fund balance policy. Maybe it relates to some kind of policy that we need to agree on, but they will help us all get on the same page about things well in advance of knowing the actuals about it. Thanks so much for your time.
So I think the easy way to answer that concern, Laura, would be the output of the POOL's facility condition assessment. So we actually use the 5-year projection to inform the CIP. There's also a 6 to 10 year projection then based on what those additional needs will be in time. So that tool will be used as we wrap up all of the facility condition assessments by program area, by agency, and as well as the COG building itself. So the tool exists. We're still collecting all the information to populate that, but it is an ongoing process, and that would be my expectation that you all would have based on what we've already shown and illustrated and how that worked this year with the pool's budget.
The 2 recent public works in Harris Township, $3.8 million versus what the Ferguson Township new building was. Big range in there, so I think Lou's right on target with not specifying.
Yep.
Okay, we have more discussion, otherwise we'll move into the unit vote.
Well, this would be the point for any public comment before adjourning to the unit vote.
Okay. Have anyone on public that wants to? Do all the municipalities have a quorum either here or on?
They do. Half Moon will not participate in this.
Okay, quorum of the rest of us? Colleagues, you okay?
Yes. So,
You wanna,
Mr. Chair,
wait a minute,
you would recess the meeting at this time.
yes.
If everyone could please stop talking so we can keep the move. It's difficult for those online to hear, so if you could let this happen, thank you.
Scott's gonna give us the instruction on operating this thing.
So welcome to the first ever COG General Forum unit vote. If you were here prior to the pandemic, you know that we would congregate in the room in our units, but to bring the managers in and our remote participants. We're going to use the telephone numbers that I'm about ready to screen share. This way, it's also enabled a path for anyone watching at home to join the conferences. So, if this you same way. Pick a corner, you can move out to the lobby. So if there's multiple of you, you don't, somebody can be on speaker.
Only one person on, okay. Loud and boisterous, good. Back to work, folks.
Yeah, the purple bags. Scott, roll call.
All right.
On the motion to approve the lease, State College Borough,
Yes.
College Township,
College Township votes yes.
Ferguson Township,
Yes?
Hackney Township,
Abstain?
Harris Township.
Yes.
And Patton Township.
Yes.
501.
It took a while, it was raining early, it is on the train, so. Okay, average 5? Yeah, good, thank you, okay. Good, so. Big project done, and those unit votes sort of worked, didn't it?
Mr. Chair, if I could speak to this one. So it was no accident that we picked a subject that hopefully was not very controversial to road test the procedure. Clearly there's some things that we need to work on. The biggest one is we can't have the whole room talking when the instructions are given. We'll work on that towards the future. If you have any other thoughts about how the process could work better, please feed them to the staff.
Yeah, I have one comment, and that is while the procedure went smoothly, it's up to the chairs of each municipality to chair the meeting and report the vote, not the managers of each municipality. This is a elected function, not an administrative function. That's all. Thank you.
We abided by your desires. Okay. Number 10, Shariba, are you still alive now? Okay. Back with us.
Right? Yes, hello again. So really briefly, just want to give you updates about our COVID numbers. We're at a 0.3 positivity rate, so we're still very low. Our vaccination rates are still very high. Our students on and off campus combined are 88.4% vaccinated. Our employees combined are 81.6%. The number of our union employee vaccination rate has risen slightly. So it was around 26%, now it's at 28%. And I think you know that the employees have mandated the vaccine, and we are working through that process with our employees. Also, wanted to let you know that Military Appreciation is coming up. We would love everybody to participate. It is November 8th through the 20th. This year we are highlighting the Pennsylvania National Guard. That is our theme. And the Military Appreciation Day will be November 20th. I believe that's the Rutgers game. We are looking for volunteers for the tailgate to serve our veterans. So if you are interested, please go online. You can register up until October 29th. The Military Appreciation website is militaryappreciation.psu.edu. And lastly, we are looking at possibly having the reception again this year with Dr. Barron. At that time, we hope to present more on the Muscle Gap to Valley Lands project. So you should be receiving something very soon. That's all for me.
Thank you, Sherelle. I believe Gretchen Brent is not with us, correct? Executive Director, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for working with us on the test drive of the unit voting process. We've tested a few other iterations of this with staff and municipal managers, and hopefully this worked pretty well. We appreciate the feedback as indicated by the Vice Chair. If there are any other suggestions, please let us know. In your packet was the monthly activity report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, or the staff, the agency directors that are online can help out if there are any questions on that. Otherwise, we can move on.
Questions of our distinguished director? Must be satisfied of it.
Thank you.
Committee reports, Eric, Gretchen.
Do you have anything for agency director?
No.
He had his, but.
Yeah, you're next. Committee report.
Okay, very good. The executive committee met, talked, resulted in today's meeting. Have a nice night.
Finance committee, as sweet and short.
Yes, we exhaustively covered it earlier in the agenda.
Can I keep the trend going? Human resources, who's doing? Bob?
I don't think I'm gonna be quite that short, unfortunately. I'm not gonna be very long-winded though. We again, looked at the topic of, mandating vaccines for COG employees. After extensive research on, the pros and cons, we decided to state that our recommendation to the executive director is to stay the course with the, policies and procedures that we currently have in place. Because our vaccination rates among COG employees are, I don't have my exact number, but I believe it was somewhere near 83%. And there were other factors that we considered, but we decided that trying to mandate 100% vaccination among the COG employees was going to create more problems than it was going to solve. So that was our recommendation, but that's what I have, so.
There's more bees and honey than you can with vinegar, so.
Yeah.
Parks Capital, public safety did not meet. The joint public service environment and transportation land use is discussed adequately as item F. Teresa, anything you want to add to that?
Only that, we have for the first time in a number of years, got a real plan to help expand affordable housing. There are a large number of people working together and pulling together again. And I'm very much hoping that federal funds and state funds will help make some of these things work. They're not easy, and it was nice to see how much had been covered.
Facilities, Mr. Fike.
Once again, I do believe staff has covered facilities appropriately.
Climate action, Betsy, there in the corner.
Yes, we actually had a little bit of hot action on the, concerning the discussion of the changing of the date of the bulk waste pickup. And I'm proud to say that, because things were done a little bit differently this time, and a quick synopsis for those of you who were not involved in the initial conversations and frustrations over this. Bulk Waste called and said they did not have the staff power, Waste Management called and said they did not have the staff power to conduct bulk waste when it was originally scheduled. So the director of our bulk waste Shelley Nato and our esteemed director of COG made an executive decision, as it were, and said it was okay for bulk waste to not go forward as scheduled with, Waste Management to not go for bulk waste as scheduled, and that it would be scheduled at a later date. In the past, changes with waste collection have been discussed with the committee that was overseeing it. They were not done this time. We had change of leadership, but I am proud to say that the both Ms. Mato and Mr. Norberg, as well as the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, sat down and hashed out difficulties not only in adjusting to the change in the schedule and getting it out to respective townships, residents, and then also the procedure for such change going ahead. So we left it that Eric Norberg and Shelley Nato will and have taken under advisement many of the comments, and will present back to the committee at our next meeting with a written procedure going forward. We will not add to our verbiage by having a written procedure, but all seem to agree to that.
Thank you. We have 13, someone's
Oh,
got. Lois?
I actually see it. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, thanks Betsy. So I think right now our biggest concern is this gonna be rescheduled in a timely manner, because we're moving rapidly through October. And you know, if we get an early snow, that's gonna really put the kibosh on any kind of bulk waste collection, I would think. I don't.
And I think that might be a question that Eric can answer at this point, but as far as I know, there's not any definite date set yet.
Right, I checked, yes, I checked with Shelley just before dinner, before the meeting tonight, and we expect to have a date announced tomorrow or Wednesday. We're very close to confirming that with Waste Management. It will require adequate time for communication and notification to everybody. But one of the things that Shelley told me anecdotally is that though some people missed the initial communication, did put things out, Waste Management's doing a great job of picking up the things they can that are allowed to be picked up with regular weekly pickup, even though it's maybe in excess, as long as it's not something that can't be landfilled. So certain things are being picked up, and we're trying to keep up with that. So we have learned some lessons along the way with this, and hopefully we'll have a new date shortly.
Must admit, I got my first COG mobile call last week from Shelley. Oh, God, I love mobile calls. Elliot, you had a question, or you okay? Okay, we'll move on.
I was just gonna point out that if it snowed, it could hide the problem waiting until the snow.
13 items of matters of record. Anyone like to pull one of those for discussion? I would point to item C. The executive committee had a very good discussion with Tom Charles from the hospital regarding COVID. He could not make it this month. We may reschedule November just to bring us up to date with how the hospital is handling the COVID situation. We'll talk to the executive committee again about rescheduling, but did a very good presentation for us. I'm going to switch to page 15, item 18. Laura, you want to adjourn?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce that the person from Mountain E really reinforced with us, yes, vaccinate, but then don't just relax. We all really need to be still social distancing and masking. I know it's really a drag. It's just, frankly, it's just a huge drag, but we really have to do that. And that's when I asked what we could do, that's what the response was. So vaccinate, mask, social distance. Thanks.
At the same time, you want to move number 18 to German?
Yes. Do it, Laura.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.